Growing up, I knew exactly where I was heading next. Every change that occurred had already been predestined by either my family or by society, and I went along with it. I stayed at home, living my suburban life until I was 4 and old enough to go to preschool. Then once I agreed that, I went on to elementary school, then middle school, then high school, and eventually college. My routine was my shield, and my predictable life guarded me from the unpredictability of the rest of the world, and I was disillusioned by it. My family and I had plenty of ways of knowing what was going on outside of our quaint suburb. We were subscribed to the daily newspaper and our TV was constantly on. But to me, the newspaper was just material for me to fold my paper airplanes, and the TV was just background noise. I never really understood the Vietnam War until 3 months into attending college at UC Berkeley. On my way to class, I saw a group of people holding up signs and handing out flyers in front of Sprouse Hall, each with different slogans on them. A classmate, Erica, who I recognized from one of my classes, came over and handed me a piece of paper. "Hey, come down to Oakland today for the protest," she said. I had homework, but for some reason I couldn't bring myself to say no. What I felt that day did not change me. I didn't feel the sadness or rage that everyone seemed to carry around with them along with their signs of protest. Instead, I just felt distant, as if my perfect little life was a wall instead of a shield, blocking me from the other side. What I felt that day did not change me. What I learned after that day did. A few weeks later, I returned home for winter break. As I drove into my suburb, I saw 2 little boys playing in front of their lawn. One of the boys said, "Come here, Andy. We gotta cover ourselves in mud." He paused to wipe 2 streaks of brown dirt on his face, then said, "And hide behind the trees." "Hurry, Andy," he yelled. "The Viet Cong are coming." He proceeded to point at imaginary figures in the distance while his friend Andy crawled behind the tree next to him. I wondered if they knew just how real those imaginary figures were.
When I was a kid, my father taught me how to throw. At first, I hated it. I couldn't get the technique down. "Draw your shoulders back," his voice was at my ear, his steady hand on my back. "Check that the grip is just right on the seam. Shift your weight to your back leg and take a step backwards. Wind up, throw. Come on, Ryan, this should be as easy as breathing." I remember standing, feet planted on grass, practicing my pitches countlessly at the local park. One day, I got good. It wasn't long before my resentment turned to affinity. "You have a future," the baseball coach marveled. "You could bring a lot of good to our team." They all looked at me the same, proud and hopeful, especially my dad. My future. Whenever I thought about it, I imagined myself in my dad's old gloves, doing what I did best, pitching. I looked at my feet. I was not standing over the grass at my neighborhood park. This terrain was unfamiliar. Tall, razor-sharp grass brushed against my trousers. The sun beat down on my back. I looked at my hand. This was not a ball. "What are you doing, Ryan?" my comrade hissed. "Throw the damn grenade." I had to wonder the same thing. What was I doing? Here, and not back home, where my family was. Here, with a burning throat and aching muscles. Here, where men entered the playing field and never returned. Here, where blood ran freer than water. "Come on, Ryan," I told myself. "This should be as easy as breathing." But it wasn't. The air was hardly any different here, but somehow it felt like my lungs were wading through water. Sometimes I was scared to inhale. What would I smell? Blood? Everything was awash with blood. And it never got any easier. Sometimes I closed my eyes and all I saw was red. I looked across the field and took a deep breath, counted to 3, and reminded myself why I was here. It is an honor to serve one's country, son. My dad had never cried in front of me. On the day he sent me off, we both ignored how watery his eyes were. "Come back home as soon as you win." He said it as if there was another one of my games, but it wasn't. This was war. I drew my shoulders back, checked that the grip was just right on the seams, shifted my weight to my back leg, and took a heavy step backwards, wound up and threw. Who knows how many futures I destroyed.
All of our focus was on the TV screen, which displayed who would be selected from the draft. I was hugging my husband tightly and praying with all my heart that he would not be sent to combat in Vietnam. My prayers went unanswered. His fate was sealed the instant his birth date appeared on the screen. I still remember that moment. I felt his heart stop for an instant, as in mine, and a sense of apprehensiveness came over his face. A few weeks later, he headed for Vietnam and hugged each of us one last time. When he finally disappeared into the distance, I realized how war was tearing our lives apart. my husband was forced to lose everything he had, including his freedom. I lost the love of my life. My children lost their father, whom they had looked up to. When he was gone, I was alone. Now I had to carry the responsibilities of 2 people. I immediately got a job at a factory in order to put food on the table for me and our 3 children. Work hours were long and pay was minimal. Every day, I returned home exhausted, but I couldn't get a moment's rest. I thought about him in those dark hours. I thought about what could have happened to him while I wasn't there beside him. I heard too many horror stories in the day, stories about how other families had already lost their men to the war. I remember looking in the mirror one day, my hair streaked with gray and my eyes rimmed with shadows. I didn't know how to answer my children when they asked where their father was. I couldn't bring myself to tell them that their father was gone, at war. Instead, I took their small hands in mine and said, "You know the superheroes that you read about in your comics? Well, Daddy is being a hero right now in a faraway land." Their faces would light up. At first, this satisfied them, but after months of not seeing their father, I could tell that my tale would not hold up. Those months turned into years, but I still had faith that he'd come back, until the day that we got a call. "I'm so sorry, Miss Smith. I'm so sorry."